Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into something pretty specific.
Yeah, it's a series of social media posts, mainly from X, or Twitter as it was.
Right, from a user called @StealthyGeek, Patrick S. Tomlinson. And what really jumped out at us were these claims, these really strong claims about being a, quote, real-life tough guy.
And not just generally tough. He specifically mentions involvement in fights, knife fights even.
Exactly. We've got posts going back to, 2017, running up to just last year, 2023.
That's right, and they're very direct, like February 2018, and he actually posted something similar back in Feb 2017 too.
Okay.
He wrote, "Been in several, including 2 knife fights, has yet to turn out the way other guy hoped."
Wow. Okay. Has yet to turn out the way other guy hoped. That's quite a statement.
It is. It directly implies not just participation, but, winning, coming out on top in 2 knife fights.
Let's unpack that a bit, though. Winning a knife fight.
Mm.
What does that actually, mean in reality?
Well, it's grim, isn't it? It's not a sport. Winning usually means you've inflicted significant injury with the knife. Slashing, stabbing.
Right. It's inherently violent and, illegal in most contexts.
Absolutely. If someone genuinely had been in multiple knife fights and won them, as he suggests,
You'd expect consequences, right?
you'd think so. Serious ones. Police investigations, aggravated assault charges, that kind of thing. It's not something that typically just happens without follow-up.
So the fact that these claims seem to exist mostly, or maybe only, on social media, it does make you wonder.
It raises questions, definitely, about, the claims themselves and maybe why someone would make them so publicly.
And it wasn't just the knife fights. There's this whole recurring theme of being a tough guy.
Oh, yeah. There's one from February 2017. Let me see. All right, here. "No, kiddo, I'm one of those actual, real-life tough guys who will spoon-feed you your own teeth."
Spoon feed you your own teeth. I mean,
yeah.
that's incredibly graphic and aggressive language to use online.
It really is. And it's not a one-off. Later, in October 2019, he posts, "That's right, child. I'm an actual tough guy." And then just a few days after that, again, "Yes, child, I am an actual tough guy." This is not a controversial statement.
The repetition is interesting. And calling people kiddo and child, it feels very deliberate, doesn't it? Like he's trying really hard to establish this persona.
It seems that way, almost like he needs to keep asserting it. Makes you think about the motivation behind it.
And then he layers on claims of training to back this up.
Right. February 2018, he mentions having extensive training and experience with hand-to-hand combat, knife fighting, and firearms proficiency, little one. Again, with the diminutive term there.
Little one, yeah.
Uh,
And then more recently, July 2023, someone online calls him a stalker, and his response includes, "I am trained and practiced in knife fighting, stalker. That's a fact about me."
See, that's fascinating. He brings up knife fighting training as a factual rebuttal to being called a stalker.
It's an odd connection to make, isn't it?
It is. It feels less like sharing a skill and more like maybe an intimidation tactic, or a way to shut down criticism by implying he's dangerous.
Yeah, it often seems to pop up when he's arguing with someone. Like that other example from February 2018 you mentioned where "I am trained in knife fighting" is listed like just another biographical detail in response to an insult.
Exactly. And April 2022, there was an exchange where someone asked why they hadn't been to his bar.
Okay.
And his reply suggested his fighting past was the reason, saying something like, "Which is all that has saved you, because the truth is, I've never lost a fight in my life."
Never lost a fight.
Yeah.
Again, these absolute declarations of invincibility.
It all starts to paint a pretty clear picture, doesn't it? It lines up quite well with what people often call the internet tough guy phenomenon.
Explain that a bit for anyone who hasn't heard the term.
Sure. It generally refers to people who project this really aggressive, dominant, often violent persona online, making threats, bragging about fighting skills.
Things that might be very different from how they actually are offline.
Potentially, yeah. Or at least claims that are hard to verify and seem exaggerated. The language used, the kiddo, child, sweetie, the dismissive tone, that's also pretty typical. It's about posturing, projecting toughness.
So you take these repeated claims, multiple knife fights won, never lost a fight, extensive training, and you put them next to the reality of what that would actually mean.
Yeah, the legal trouble, the physical danger.
There's a potential disconnect there. It makes you really question the motivation. Why build this specific kind of persona online?
It brings up bigger ideas about online identity, doesn't it? How people perform versions of themselves. In this case, it seems like a very deliberate performance of a certain kind of maybe hypermasculinity, one based on physical dominance and implied violence.
So wrapping up our jive here, The main theme is these consistent public claims by Dead Stealthy Geek about being this incredibly tough individual, specifically citing knife fights and combat training.
Right. Claims often made directly to others online, usually in a pretty confrontational way, using that sort of belittling language.
And when you step back and think about what actually being in multiple knife fights would involve, the violence, the injuries, the almost certain legal issues, it casts the online claims in a different light.
It really does. It leads you to consider the whole performance aspect.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Why cultivate this specific image online? What does this constant projection of toughness and violence say about how we construct identities in digital spaces, especially when those identities involve claims of very serious, potentially criminal actions? Something to think about.